So, what do you do with jealousy on your worship team? If you've been involved with worship ministry for any amount of time, I'm sure you've seen it. And if you haven't seen it yet, then it's just a matter of time. You know, team members that are eyeing each other subtly or not so subtly because so-and-so got to lead more songs than them, or this person got this part and this person didn't. Jealousy happens. The good news is it doesn't have to stay that way. You know, jealousy is a subtle but serious threat to the health of your worship team. It's kind of like a weed. If you don't pull it out from the root, then it just spreads and it chokes the life out of the community that you're trying to build. So how do you handle a situation like that? So in this video, we're going to dig into why jealousy happens on worship teams, some of the common mistakes that leaders make, and most importantly, what to do when it happens. So if you're new to the channel, my name's Jeff. I'm a worship ministry coach, and I help worship leaders overcome obstacles like jealousy on their team to fulfill the mission, the vision that God's given to them for their church. I've worked with hundreds of worship leaders and teams, and I'll tell you, jealousy on the team is not abnormal, especially for smaller teams and younger leaders, but it's definitely something that can be fixed and eliminated, but you definitely have to tackle it head on. So James 3:16 says, "For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice." That's a pretty strong warning. I mean, jealousy doesn't just sit there, it festers. It grows, it disrupts the unity that all of us are trying to build in our worship teams. So when I was like in 5th grade, I tried out for the boys basketball team. And I was a fairly athletic kid, you know, the kind of kid that, you know, usually found my way around. I wasn't picked last in dodgeball. However, I was short, and I kind of still am. But when it came time to announce who made the team and who didn't, I was not on the list. I was beaten out by Jason Manton, who was much taller than me. He probably doesn't remember it at all, but I certainly do. To say that I was jealous would be a major understatement. I mean, I felt overlooked and not good enough. You know, looking back at a trivial basketball tryout may seem small and not a big deal, but isn't that exactly what happens with worship teams so often? I mean, none of us want to make anyone feel overlooked or not good enough. At the same time, we're supposed to be leaders who are making choices. And by nature, we're going to put some people in more visible roles and others in not so visible roles. So first, let's take a look at possible reasons why this might happen in your worship team. And then we'll talk specifically about how to handle when it does. So, why does jealousy happen on a worship team? Well, let's jump right into it. I have found that jealousy, when you spell it right, can't spell. I've found that jealousy happens on a worship team for one of 3 reasons, typically. The first reason that jealousy may be on your team is because of a lack of clarity. Okay? So when things aren't clear for a worship team or for worship team members, a lot of times things can get muddy and people cannot understand the roles that different people play, or the philosophy that you live by. You know, as I was talking about basketball before, you know, when you think about younger kids playing sports, you know, when they're young, there's kind of this expectation that you're going to get equal playing time, right? That the kid that maybe isn't so good is going to get the same playing time that the one that's maybe the best player on the team. But reality is that as kids get older, there's an understanding that that's not the way that life works. There's going to be a lean towards the better kids, the more skilled in that specific sport. The taller kids are going to get more playing time than the shorter kids. It's the way life works, like it or not. So with your worship team, it's really important that we're setting the right expectations, because expectations drive behavior. In the context of relationships, if you aren't clear on expectations, it's not going to go well. If somebody expects certain things from a relationship and they don't get that, then it's gonna end in hurt feelings. It's gonna end not in good things. Whereas if you set clear expectations, then everyone's on the same page. If you have a philosophy that it's all skate and everyone has equal playing time, then communicate that clearly. Most people aren't doing that though. If you have a philosophy that best player wins, so to speak, then make sure that you're communicating that clearly so that everyone's on the same page. The second one has more to do with the leader, and that is enabling behavior. Enabling is basically when you, as a person, act in a way that enables someone's bad behavior. I've seen over and over again where leaders unintentionally actually fan the flame of bad behavior because they aren't willing to make the hard steps to address it, to have the hard conversations, to step in and put a stop to something that needs stopped for the health of your ministry. Or sometimes it's actually the opposite, where somebody gives too much attention to the squeaky wheel, and then over here all the healthy people are doing just fine and being neglected, and then they end up leaving because there's so much attention on the negative. The point is, though, as a strong leader, you want to address it head on so that you take care of it from the root. And the third reason that you may see jealousy on your team is just for personal reasons. Sometimes when people act poorly, it's not because of you. It's not about you. It's not about your ministry. It's not about something that's wrong. Maybe it's that something is wrong in their world. In the business world, they talk a lot about how if you have a good performing employee and then all of a sudden they start acting poorly, don't just assume that they're being lazy or that they're just have a bad attitude. More than likely, it's because there's something going on in their lives that needs attention. So instead of pushing the envelope or pushing them away, maybe you need to press in and actually pastor them, actually listen to them, because there's probably a reason. Bonus material. Before we get into specifically how to address a situation, let me talk about a couple of things you want to make sure that you don't do. Do not ignore it. One of the worst things that you can do is just pretend that it's not happening. So often in the church world, that's what we do. We allow bad behavior to happen, bad things to happen within the church. And when you don't address it, you're doing exactly what we talked about before. You're enabling the bad stuff. And that will never end in a good way. It will always be a bad thing. So make sure, do not ignore it. Address it head on. Second thing is, don't be cryptic.
Don't skate around the issue. A lot of times, I'm a 9, so I understand avoiding conflict. But um, I also recognize that as a leader, if you want to have a healthy ministry, you have to confront the issues in your ministry. Otherwise, it's not gonna go well. It just grows, and then the healthy things in your ministry go away. So don't drop hints. Don't just make vague comments. Actually address it head on, and we'll talk more about that in these specific steps. So now that we've talked that, let's get into, you have a situation where there's jealousy in your ministry. What specifically do you do? Here's at least 5 good steps that you can make whenever you have a jealousy issue in your worship ministry. So let's go with point number 1. And it sounds cliche, but I think it really needs to be said. You should always start with prayer. Start by asking God how to address this situation. How should you move forward with it? Pray for the people that are involved in the situation and ask God to give you wisdom. Scripture over and over again is full of times when God gives leaders insight, when God speaks to a specific situation. And I've seen it in my life, I've seen it in my ministry, and in the lives of other worship leaders over and over again. When we go to the Lord and ask Him for wisdom and guidance in a situation, He is faithful to give it. Scripture tells us that if we lack wisdom, then ask. And I believe that He will set your heart right. He will set the individuals involved's hearts right, and give you wisdom on how to get from here to there moving forward. So don't skip that step. Make sure you pray first. Number 2, address it privately first. I really believe that Matthew 18 lays out really clearly how we're supposed to address conflict. And this isn't specifically conflict, but people can feel confronted for sure whenever there's jealousy involved in your ministry. So make sure that you do it in a way that doesn't put people down, that's loving, that's, hey, I noticed this and I just want to talk through this with you. If you can, I really encourage you to take them out to lunch, get some coffee, whatever works for you in your setting. Take the time to get with them. Don't do this over text or on a phone call even. You want to do this face to face, because this is where leadership is showing truth and love. Number 3 is seek to understand first. Look to understand their perspective before jumping to a conclusion. You may see it really clearly, or you may not. Or as I said before, sometimes it has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with your ministry, it has nothing to do with any of that. Maybe somebody's just having a hard time, and they need someone to come alongside of them and encourage them, love them, pastor them. That's why we are worship leaders, but we are also worship pastors, and our people need us to come alongside of them. I have this quote by this guy named Washington Irving. It says, "There is never jealousy where there is not strong regard." And that's just a reminder to me that jealousy doesn't happen because people are being apathetic. No, it happens because they care. It happens because they're passionate. Sometimes we can get our passions out of whack and it become too self-focused, and that happens. If that happens, still pastor. Walk them through it. But understand that it comes from a place of passion. And the more that we can posture ourselves to understand perspective versus feeling like we're the end all be all, or that we understand or see everything, the better it will go. Step number 4, and I alluded to this some earlier, but be direct. Make sure that you aren't wishy-washy. The more you can go into it with a clear, concrete, like, give specifics, give concrete examples where, I saw this, or somebody said that this happened, and I just want to clarify. The more that we can be direct in these situations and strong, it helps us direct the ship back to the place that we want it to be. Point number 5, make sure that you are validating and encouraging. Validate their feelings. Feelings aren't always right, but there is something to just going, you know what? I see you and I understand. And I could see how that could be that way or feel that way. But also encourage and spur on to where their strengths are. This happens a lot with vocalists. Maybe they're not to a place where they could strongly lead the congregation in a song yet, but that's where they desperately want to be. The more we can encourage them in what they are strong with, encourage them with the positives, the things that you see in their lives that are encouraging and that do spur them on. And maybe it's not that they're the strongest vocalist, but you know what? They worship amazing, and they really do lead people from that place. And then give them a path to get to the place where they can maybe lead more songs. But validate them, encourage them, and pastor them basically along the path as you address these situations of jealousy. And finally, make sure that you define next steps. Kind of going off of what I was just saying just a minute ago, is that you want to create a clear path from where they are. Obviously, if they're jealous about a situation, then they're probably discontent with where they are and they want to get somewhere. They want to be able to do what so-and-so does. Back to the vocalist kind of situation. If there's a vocalist who's disgruntled with the opportunities that they have and they have no clear path for getting from where they are to where they want to be, it will not get better. But if you make it clear on how they could move that way, whether they do or not, it puts the ball in their court. It puts it into their hands where they have the choice. They can put in the hard work. They can make the effort, or they can choose not to. So they can either walk that path. It makes it clear that it's not okay for you to not walk that path and be disgruntled and be jealous. It kind of goes along with that clarity thing. It gives a clear path moving forward from where you are. Guys, there's no way around it. Jealousy on your worship team stinks, and there's not really an easy way to walk through it. But hopefully these steps help to kind of clarify why it might be happening and maybe some steps to take to get to a healthier place. So these were practical things to talk about. You have jealousy in your ministry. What do you do about this specific situation? I'm going to be posting my next video that will be right up here or over here. I'm not sure which. Anyways, that will be addressing how do you create a culture that within your worship ministry that keeps it away. What kinds of things can you do to be preemptive in creating a culture that does not spur on jealousy within your worship ministry? So click on that if that sounds like interest. Otherwise, like, subscribe. Guys, any of that really is helpful if this has been helpful to you. So thanks so much. I'll see you next time.